I trusted him completely until I discovered his secret affair. But when I exposed him at his job, everyone watched him crumble, and my life changed forever. I never thought I'd be the kind of wife to suspect my husband, but something had changed. Small things, little cracks in his routine I couldn't ignore. The way he picked up his phone and hurried to another room. The sudden extra hours at work. The faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself I was overthinking, but my gut screamed otherwise. One night, while he was in the shower, I couldn't resist. I peeked at his phone. Not proud of it, but desperate for the truth. And there it was. Messages. Flirty. Secretive. Addressed to a woman whose name I barely recognized. My hands shook. My heart raced. I felt like I was drowning, trapped between disbelief and rage. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the texts, trying to process how someone I had loved for years could betray me so quietly, so deliberately. The messages weren't just innocent, they were intimate, affectionate, proof that my husband had built a world where I didn't exist. I didn't know what to do at first. My mind spun with ideas. Confront him at home, follow him, even hire someone to find out more. But one thought kept repeating itself. I deserved the truth, and I deserved to show him that I wasn't blind. The next morning I acted calm, like nothing had changed. I watched him sip his coffee, pretending to laugh at his jokes, but my mind was already plotting. I had to gather more evidence, a moment when I could confront him without doubt, without anyone saying I was crazy or imagining things. Days passed. I noticed him texting more secretly, glancing around nervously when I entered the room. Every slip, every whisper, every hesitation was a piece of the puzzle, and I was determined to see the picture in full. Then it happened, a small, careless mistake. He left his email logged in on the family computer, and there it was again. Proof, screenshots, evidence that this wasn't a fleeting mistake, but a deliberate, ongoing affair. My hands trembled as I saved the files, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. I knew I couldn't let it stay hidden any longer. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or silently suffer. I was going to confront him, publicly if necessary, in a way he couldn't escape, a way that made him understand that betrayal has consequences. I didn't yet know the storm I was about to unleash, the looks on coworkers' faces, the shame that would ripple across his life. But I knew one thing clearly. I wasn't going to stay silent. Not anymore. If you discovered your partner was cheating, would you confront them privately or publicly? After I found the emails and messages, I knew I had to plan carefully. This wasn't just about anger or revenge, as well it was about exposing the truth in a way that he couldn't deny, couldn't twist, couldn't gaslight me out of. I wanted him to understand the consequences of his choices and to feel the shock that betrayal leaves behind. I spent the next few days watching him, noting patterns, memorizing his schedule. When he left for work, I didn't follow obsessively, but I observed from afar. His coworkers were friendly, oblivious to the chaos I knew was hiding behind his calm demeanor. The office was filled with chatter, laughter, the hum of computers, a perfect stage. I rehearsed in my head what I would say. Not accusations, not insults, just facts. The texts, the emails, the undeniable proof. I wanted him to feel the weight of exposure without me stooping to name-calling or dramatics. There was power in composure. Mia, my best friend, became my confidant. I shared everything with her, from the discovery of the affair to my plan to confront him at work. Are you sure about this? She asked, her eyes wide with concern. I have to be, I said. He's been hiding behind lies for months. If I confront him at home, he'll deny it, hide it, gaslight me. But if I confront him where others can see, where the truth is undeniable, maybe he'll finally realize the consequences. She nodded slowly. Just be careful. Don't let anger make you reckless. You want justice, not a scene that you'll regret. I took a deep breath. Mia was right. I wasn't doing this to humiliate him. I was doing it to reclaim my dignity, to stop the secrecy that had poisoned our marriage. I spent hours reviewing the messages, printing them, making copies, organizing screenshots. Everything had to be clear, undeniable, precise. By the end of the week, I had a plan. I would visit his office under the guise of bringing him lunch, a casual, innocent excuse that would get me in front of him. Then I would show him the evidence, calmly, quietly, but in a way that couldn't be ignored. The office would be filled with people. His colleagues would witness his reaction. And that reaction? I was ready to see it. All night, I rehearsed my words, the timing, the way I would hold the evidence. I imagined his face turning red, the disbelief, the shame, the sudden panic of being caught, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power, clarity, determination. I knew the confrontation would change everything. There was no turning back, no retreat. And as I went to bed that night, the printed emails neatly stacked on my desk, I whispered to myself, this ends today. No lies, no hiding, no betrayal left unexposed. If you plan to expose a cheating partner at their workplace, would you go alone or ask a friend for help? The morning felt heavier than usual, the sunlight streaming through the kitchen window feeling almost accusatory. I held the neatly stacked emails and printed messages in my bag, my heart hammering with anticipation. Today, nothing would be hidden, nothing would be denied. I drove to his office under the guise of bringing him lunch, casual and calm, rehearsing my steps over and over. My palms were sweaty, but my face was composed. I told myself this wasn't about anger, this was about truth. As I walked into the office lobby, I noticed the usual buzz. Coworkers chatting, typing, laughing. It felt surreal that their ordinary day was about to collide with my carefully laid plan. When I stepped into his office, he looked up from his desk, surprise flickering across his face. Lila, what are you doing here? I set the bag down, keeping my voice steady. I thought you might be hungry. Lunch? I smiled faintly. Casual, but my eyes were sharp, focused. He chuckled nervously. Thanks, but you didn't have to. I interrupted gently, pulling out the printed emails. I need to show you something you can't ignore. His smile faltered. I laid the papers on his desk, screenshots of messages, the intimate exchanges, the undeniable evidence of his affair. These, I said softly, prove that you've been hiding things from me, lying to me, betraying our marriage. For a moment, he froze, staring at the papers, the color draining from his face. His mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words came. I continued, calm, precise, controlled. I wanted to confront you privately, but you've left me no choice. People need to see the truth if you can't admit it yourself. This ends now. Just then, a coworker peeked in, curious about the unusual tension, and another. Within moments, the office was quiet, all eyes on us. I could feel my pulse, the adrenaline, the strange mix of fear and liberation. He tried to speak, to explain, to deny, but every excuse fell flat under the evidence laid bare. I had anticipated this. No room to twist, no room to hide. Then it happened. The guilt, the shock, the humiliation, it all reflected on his face. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darted around, and for the first time in months, I saw him truly accountable. He whispered, Lila, I shook my head gently. No more lies. Not to me, not to anyone else. People deserve to know the truth, and you need to face the consequences. The office remained tense. Some coworkers looked shocked, some sympathetic, others whispered quietly among themselves. I felt a surge of relief, a clarity I hadn't known since discovering the affair. I gathered my things, my hand steady now. Before leaving, I looked him directly in the eye. This is on you. Your choices, your betrayal. And now everyone knows. Walking out of the office, I felt lighter than I had in months. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, it had all been replaced by something stronger. Justice, clarity, and the power of truth. Would you confront a cheating spouse in front of their coworkers, or handle it privately at home? Walking out of his office, I felt a mix of adrenaline and exhaustion. The hallway seemed unusually quiet, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Whispers followed me, but not the cruel ones I feared. Instead, I heard murmurs of surprise, curiosity, even admiration. I caught a glimpse of his coworkers peering through glass partitions, some exchanging glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The reality of what I'd done began to sink in. This wasn't just a personal confrontation anymore. It was public, unavoidable. By the time I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls, notifications. Mia's name popped up repeatedly. I tapped the screen. You did it, she wrote. I saw. I can't believe how calm you were. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself. Calm, yes, but inside, my heart was still racing. I had exposed him, yes, but the weight of watching him squirm, the shock on his face, the eyes of everyone witnessing it, it was almost surreal. Back home, I replayed the confrontation in my head. Every glance, every gulp, every silent gasp from his coworkers. I wondered what they thought about him, about me, about the situation unraveling like this. But one thing was certain, he couldn't hide behind lies anymore. The following day, I noticed subtle changes. His colleagues treated him differently. Some avoided him, others whispered, casting pointed glances my way when he wasn't looking. And he was quieter than ever, hesitant, his usual arrogance replaced by a humbling awareness of what had just happened. Even at home, the tension was palpable. He didn't speak much, and when he did, his words were clipped, awkward, guilt-laden. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and pity. Betrayal deserved accountability, and this was his reckoning. Mia called later that evening. So, the office? She asked, teasing lightly. I laughed softly. It was exactly what I imagined, but better. He didn't get to twist the story. Everyone saw everything. No excuses. Her voice softened. I'm proud of you, Lila. Not just for confronting him, but for staying composed. That takes real courage. I smiled faintly, feeling a quiet strength settling in. The exposure wasn't just about shame or revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity, proving that I wouldn't tolerate deception, and sending a message that truth, even when uncomfortable, cannot be hidden. Later that week, rumors began to swirl. Some people praised me, some judged me, and some whispered about the drama. It didn't matter. For the first time in months, I felt in control of my own story, my own narrative, my own life. He sat silently across from me during dinner, words failing him. I met his gaze steadily. No anger, no tears, no pleading, just truth. And in that silence, the power dynamic had shifted. Not just between us, but within me. For the first time, I felt free. Would you feel guilty or satisfied after exposing a cheating partner publicly? The days that followed the confrontation were surreal. His office was buzzing, not with laughter or casual chatter, but with subtle tension. People glanced at him differently, some offering sympathetic nods to me as I passed. The power and the truth had shifted everything. At home, the atmosphere was heavy. He tried talking, fumbling through words, apologies tangled with defensiveness. I listened, but my patience was cautious, my trust no longer automatic. I had been betrayed, and while the affair had been exposed, the wound was deep. Mia stopped by after work, her eyes wide as I recounted the week. You've literally turned his world upside down, she said, half in awe, half in disbelief. I just didn't stay silent, I admitted, sipping my coffee. It wasn't easy. Every step felt like walking on a knife's edge, but someone had to stop pretending everything was fine. She nodded. And you did it with grace. That's why people respect you, even those who didn't like what you did. Meanwhile, his colleagues started to behave cautiously around him. Some whispered, some avoided eye contact. I could see it when I visited him at the office later that week for a brief meeting he requested. He tried small talk, but his usual confidence was gone, replaced by hesitancy and shame. And then came the gossip. Of course, it wasn't all praise. Some whispered that I had embarrassed him unnecessarily, that I'd taken a private matter public, but I didn't let it reach me. I knew the truth, and that was stronger than any rumor. I also began rebuilding my life. Small steps at first. Gym classes, reconnecting with old friends, taking long walks to clear my mind. I realized that while he had broken my trust, I could choose how to repair my own spirit. One afternoon, I received a message from an anonymous coworker of his, praising me subtly. You did the right thing, it read. He's been acting differently since the exposure. You didn't just confront him, you exposed a culture of lies. Respect. I smiled quietly. It wasn't about recognition, not really. It was validation that truth carries weight, that actions matter, and that betrayal cannot hide forever. He tried small gestures at home, flowers, notes, soft-spoken apologies, but I knew reconciliation wasn't about guilt or charm. It was about accountability, change, and proof that trust could be rebuilt. And in the quiet moments, I realized something important. My life didn't stop because he betrayed me. My happiness, my confidence, my dignity, those weren't gifts he could take away. I had reclaimed them. The affair's exposure had done more than embarrass him publicly. It had awakened me, reminded me of my worth, and strengthened my voice. And that voice, calm, strong, undeniable, was no longer afraid of anyone, anywhere. After exposing a partner's betrayal, would you focus on rebuilding yourself first or try to repair the relationship? The office had changed completely. Before, it was just background noise, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, casual chatter. Now, every glance, every whisper seemed charged. I wasn't even present most days, but the ripple of my confrontation carried everywhere he went. His coworkers were cautious. Some avoided him outright. Others whispered behind closed doors, and a few looked at me with quiet admiration when they learned I had been the catalyst. The office dynamics had shifted in subtle but unmistakable ways. I wasn't trying to ruin him, yet watching the aftermath unfold had a strange power. He had to face the truth, and everyone around him now saw that he wasn't infallible. It wasn't humiliation for me. No, it was accountability. I noticed small changes in him. He was quieter during meetings, more hesitant when talking to colleagues, less certain of himself. Even small gestures, like avoiding eye contact when someone mentioned a project I was involved in, revealed a man trying to navigate a world where he could no longer hide behind lies. Meanwhile, whispers about me began to circulate, not all of them flattering. Some said I had gone too far, that a private matter should stay private. I ignored them. I wasn't doing this for approval or applause. I was doing it for truth, for closure, for reclaiming my dignity. Mia stopped by one evening, sipping her tea as we sat on my couch. People are talking, she said. Some admire you, some hate you, some are just shocked. I nodded, leaning back. Let them talk. I don't need their validation. I needed the truth, and I have it. That's enough. Even he started trying to regain control. A little charm, a few awkward attempts at small talk, trying to repair a reputation that had been quietly crumbling since the confrontation. But the truth is persistent, and people remember. The whispers, the awareness, the shift in respect. It wasn't something he could undo with smiles or apologies. At home, things were tense but quieter. His attempts at reconciliation were cautious, almost tentative. He wasn't arrogant anymore. He wasn't the man who thought he could deceive and charm his way out. He had to prove he could be trusted, if at all. And I wasn't rushing to give him that chance. I started focusing more on myself. New routines, new habits, reclaiming parts of my life I had neglected while he was lying. Friends, hobbies, work projects, things that reminded me of my independence and strength. I realized that exposure wasn't just about making him accountable. It was about reminding myself that I had power, that I deserved respect, and that betrayal doesn't define me. By the end of the week, it was clear. The affair's consequences weren't just his burden. They rippled through his workplace, through our social circles, through every interaction. And I, calm, collected, and unapologetically strong, had become the center of the change. If a partner's betrayal affected their workplace or social circle, would you step back or continue holding them accountable publicly? I never expected support to come from strangers. Friends, yes, but strangers? That was something new. It started with subtle messages. A coworker from a different department texting, "You handled that really well," or a distant friend commenting, "I'm proud of you for standing up." At first, I brushed it off, but the messages kept coming, small and steady, like gentle waves washing away months of doubt and hurt. Even my social media feeds, which I had avoided, became a source of quiet encouragement. People shared similar stories, people saying, "I would have done the same," or "It takes courage to confront betrayal." I read each one, feeling a strange warmth. Validation, yes, but also a reminder that my voice mattered, that standing up for myself wasn't just for me, it resonated with others. At home, he watched silently, awkwardly, as I began to carry myself differently. He tried small gestures again, offering explanations, apologies, even casual conversation. I listened politely, but I wasn't chasing closure from him anymore. My closure was coming from myself and the recognition that I had acted with integrity and courage. Mia and I met for coffee one afternoon. "I feel like you've changed," she said, smiling. "You're not the same woman who was scared and unsure. You're stronger, more confident. People see it too." I laughed lightly. I guess I had to face betrayal head on. There's no other way to reclaim yourself after something like this. The messages continued. One came from a colleague of his I barely knew. "I wanted to say thank you," it read. "Seeing what happened reminded me to be honest in my own life. You didn't just expose him, and you inspired others." The words struck me harder than I expected. Inspiration from exposing a painful truth? I realized then that standing up for yourself doesn't just affect the person who wronged you, it ripples outward, touching people in ways you never anticipate. Even friends who had hesitated to comment before started asking for advice, sharing their own fears about confronting dishonesty and betrayal. And I, who had felt powerless for months, found myself offering encouragement, sharing strategies, reminding them that courage is quiet but undeniable. At work, he continued to struggle with his reputation. And while I didn't relish seeing him embarrassed, I couldn't deny the satisfaction of justice being met. People were talking differently, not just about him, but about me, about the way I handled the situation. I realized I wasn't just reclaiming my dignity. I was shaping the narrative, showing that betrayal is never invisible, that silence is optional, and that truth has power. That night, I looked in the mirror and finally felt a sense of peace. Not from revenge, not from exposing him, but from reclaiming my voice, my confidence, and my life. And for the first time in months, I felt truly seen. By myself, by friends, and even by strangers whose words I would never forget. Have you ever taken a stand for yourself and found unexpected support from people you didn't know? I thought the hardest part was over. I had exposed him, reclaimed my dignity, and even begun to feel a quiet sense of empowerment. But betrayal has a way of lingering, and he wasn't ready to accept defeat quietly. At first, it was small things, a dismissive remark at home, an awkward tone when we spoke, subtle digs meant to make me doubt myself. He tried to control conversations, to shift attention away from his actions. I noticed, but I didn't react. I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. At work, too, I could feel his attempts. He subtly spread his version of the story, trying to paint me as vindictive or overreacting. Whispers circulated, but I didn't engage. I knew that the truth was already undeniable. The evidence, the witnesses, the office tension, all of it was on my side. He could try to twist perception, but he couldn't erase what had happened. Mia noticed it too. He's testing you, she said over coffee one afternoon, trying to see if you'll crack. But you've already shown how strong you are. Don't let him pull you back into fear or doubt. I nodded, realizing she was right. I had spent months feeling powerless, waiting, questioning myself. I wouldn't go back there. His subtle attempts to regain control were just reminders that betrayal isn't just about the act itself, it's about the ripples it leaves behind. And I had to remain steady, unshaken, confident. I started documenting everything, small incidents, awkward interactions, passive-aggressive comments, not out of obsession, but as a reminder to myself, I am in control. I am not the victim here. I had chosen truth over silence, courage over fear. That choice gave me a strength he couldn't undo. One evening, he tried a more direct approach. He asked to talk privately, his voice softer than usual. I want to make things right, he said. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him carefully, calm, collected. It's not about doing whatever it takes, I said. It's about accountability. True change isn't just words, it's consistent actions, honesty and respect. You have a lot to prove. He nodded slowly, the weight of realization settling over him. For once, there was no defense, no charm, no excuses, just acknowledgement. And in that silence, I understood something crucial. My power wasn't in exposing him anymore. My power was in choosing how I responded, in holding firm, in showing that integrity can't be shaken by guilt or retaliation. Later that week, I noticed people around us, out friends, coworkers, watching him differently. Not with pity, not with disdain, but with quiet recognition that actions have consequences. And me? I walked with my head high, knowing that no subtle retaliation could touch the strength I had reclaimed. If a partner tried to subtly manipulate or retaliate after being exposed, would you confront them or stay composed and let actions speak for themselves? By now, the tension at home had shifted. He was quieter, more cautious, but I wasn't focused on him anymore. My attention had turned inward, to rebuilding, rediscovering, and reclaiming the life I had almost lost to betrayal and secrecy. I started small. Mornings were mine, coffee on the balcony, journaling, walks to clear my head. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, friends who reminded me who I truly was outside of the shadow of his lies. Even simple moments, laughter over silly stories, spontaneous coffee dates, became powerful affirmations that life could still be vibrant and beautiful. Work became another place of renewal. Colleagues who had whispered behind doors now offered support, subtle nods, smiles of recognition. It wasn't about notoriety. It was about authenticity. I realized that my courage had shifted more than just my home life. It had quietly changed how people perceived honesty, integrity, and strength. One evening, Mia and I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. You've come so far, she said. I'm proud of how composed you stayed. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever been betrayed. I smiled, feeling a weight lift. I think I finally understand. Courage isn't about confronting someone for revenge. It's about standing by the truth and letting that truth shape your choices and your future. Meanwhile, he tried to navigate the aftermath. Apologies, attempts at charm, trying to repair friendships and reputation, all futile. The respect he had lost wasn't mine to grant, and the trust he had broken wasn't mine to give lightly. I focused on myself instead. Hobbies I had abandoned, goals I had postponed, dreams I had tucked away, I rediscovered them all. And with each day, I felt stronger, more complete, more unshakable. Unexpectedly, I also began to inspire others. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers reached out to share their own stories of betrayal and courage. Each message reminded me that my actions mattered beyond my own life. My choice to speak up and hold him accountable had ripples far beyond what I could have imagined. One afternoon, as I walked through a park, I realized something important. I wasn't defined by his betrayal. I wasn't defined by the humiliation or whispers. I was defined by how I responded, by the grace I maintained, and by the life I reclaimed. Looking back, I knew I had turned a painful experience into a lesson of strength. The affair, the confrontation, the ripple effects, all of it had taught me about resilience, self-respect, and the power of truth. And the woman staring back at me in the reflection of a store window was no longer afraid, no longer doubting herself. She was free. Have you ever turned a betrayal into a personal transformation? How did you reclaim your strength and confidence? The months that followed were transformative. The office whispers faded, replaced by a new rhythm of respect and awareness. He had tried to recover, to patch his reputation, but nothing could erase the truth I had revealed, and I didn't need it to. My focus had shifted completely, to me, my life, and my future. At home, the tension softened. He spoke less, apologized less, and I reacted even less. I didn't need confrontation anymore. I didn't need validation from him. What I needed had always been within me: confidence, clarity, and the knowledge that I had acted with integrity. I began making plans for myself, new hobbies, projects, even trips I had postponed for years. I felt lighter, freer, like a part of me that had been dormant was finally alive again. I started connecting with friends more deeply, forming bonds that were rooted in trust and authenticity, not convenience or routine. Even at work, the change was noticeable. My colleagues treated me differently now, not just with admiration, but with a quiet recognition that integrity carries weight. It wasn't about gossip or drama anymore. It was about how one person's courage can shift perspectives, can inspire honesty, can create subtle yet powerful ripples. Occasionally, I would catch glimpses of him, quiet, reflective, no longer confident in the easy lies he had once relied on. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. His life had been touched by the truth, and the consequences were his to navigate. Watching from a distance, I felt neither anger nor satisfaction. I felt closure. Mia visited one sunny afternoon. You've changed, she said, smiling warmly. Stronger, calmer, unshakable. You've turned pain into growth, I laughed softly. I've realized something. Betrayal isn't the end. It's a crossroads. You can choose fear, anger, and resentment. Or you can choose to rise, to reclaim your life, to be unstoppable. I felt the weight of that realization settling in. Every tear, every sleepless night, every anxious thought had led me here, to a place where I no longer feared deceit, where I no longer questioned my worth, and where I could walk with pride, knowing I had acted with courage. One evening, I looked out the window at the city lights, reflecting on the journey. The confrontation, the exposure, the aftermath. It had been painful, messy, overwhelming, but it had also been liberating, clarifying, empowering. I had reclaimed more than my dignity. I had reclaimed myself, and that was a victory no betrayal, no humiliation, and no manipulation could ever take away. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free, ready to embrace life on my own terms, knowing that courage, honesty, and self-respect were my guides, now and always. Have you ever faced betrayal and used it to transform your life? How did you reclaim your strength and move forward?